So just a quick introduction about today's topic is that so far we only been doing a certain kind of relationships with our tables. We have been doing a one-to-one and a one-to-many relationship, meaning that when we have data, it only belongs to a single parent, and a parent can have either one child or it can have multiple children. And that's how our database and tables are set up currently. So with the one-to-one relationship, here's something I just pulled up into Google, is that let's say you have a students table and a contacts table. That is a one-to-one relationship because every student will have a contact, and a contact will only have belong to a single student. So that is a one-to-one relationship. The other type of relationship is that it's a one-to-many relationship. And essentially how that works is that we have a parent table here of customers, and customers can has many orders here. So you can have many types of orders, and all of these orders belong to a single customer. So you can think of it, one parent has many children, and all those children belong to that single parent. And for most of these cases, they both work for a majority of your projects that you are working in. But there are some special cases, and I'll show you one during today's lecture, of where you actually won't be using either of these just because of how it is set up. And if that's the case, you might have to use something more, some other advanced associations. And I just looked up of associations from the Rails guys here, and I'll go ahead and slack this out. This is the documentation for Rails itself, but for this specific page, it talks about associations and the different kinds of associations and how they work. And the ones that we already covered is belongs to, has one, and has many. But there's actually a lot more associations with that. There's also a has many through, has and belong to many, has one and belong to many, things like that. So depending on your use case, you might need to choose one of these other advanced associations with that. And I'll give you a demonstration of where you would use one of these associations. So the one that we'll be playing with today is called has many through. So with the has many through, you're able to have a many-to-many relationship. So with that, you can have one record belong to another record, and then you can have those records also have a many relationship with other records as well. And to kind of wrap your head around that, I'll give you a sneak preview of what we are going to build out today, which is the LMS. And occasionally you'll have your app set up to be like this. So with our LMS, which is a learning management system, we are going to build out 3 models. But for this particular model, we can't just use a has one or a has many, because with the users and courses, they actually have a correlation between each other, not just a one-way relationship like that. So how this works is that user has first name and last name, courses just has a name, and enrollment has a role, as well as both of the IDs. So essentially the relationship is that if I want users to have many courses and also courses to have many users, there's not really a good way to do that with what we have in our tool belt, right? We can't just use a has many and another has many in the other table. It just doesn't work like that. So a better thing to do is just to have a different association called a has many through. That way, users has many courses through enrollments, and courses has many users through enrollments as well. So we actually have this table here, which is a through table, to help aid us to have a many-to-many relationship. So that way, a single user can belong to multiple courses, and multiple courses can have many users. And there's multiple cases where you would use this technique, like doctors, physicians, so doctors, patients, and appointments. That's what you'll be building out tomorrow. That will be a has many through associations. And even your billboard application, that could also be a has many through association as well. So for your billboard, if we were to refactor or redo that project with the has many through, how it will work is that you'll have billboard has many artists through songs, and artists has many billboards through songs as well. So you can actually update it and have songs be your through table. But I would actually just leave it how it is right now. That's just a food for thought. So that's the kind of the idea of what we're tackling today is that we're going to have to build out a relationship where we have a many to many relationship. Any questions about that idea? Now, this is a complex idea, right? Because usually when you think about it, you have like a parent to child relationship. This one, we have multiple parents and multiple children here. So that's why it's a little bit more complex and advanced. But there's actually good news is that when you are building out your controllers as well as your routes and your associations, the users and courses are technically parents. So we can technically write it like they're both parents. And we only have one child, which is the enrollments here. And depending on if we want to show it with both of them or only in courses or only in users, we can have that be a child of courses or a child users. So it actually makes our building a lot more easier. Instead of having embedded controllers, we actually have just two parents and one child. Okay, so let's actually practice this. So let's go ahead and build this out. So go ahead and go into your project directory, and I'll give you some time to do that. And we are going to put everything together that we learned so far inside of this project, as well as just throwing in into the mix this new association. So typically, if you are planning out your models, this is why I would recommend doing this at the very beginning steps. If you need a many-to-many relationship, most likely you would need a has many through. So if users has many courses and courses has many users, if you do need that sort of relationship, you need a has many through to do that. Or else it would just be the other ones that we tackled, like a has one or has many. So go ahead and cd into your project directory, and then we'll do a Rails new, Rails LMS, and I'm going to call this summer 20. And we need two flags. The first one is specifying our database, so PostgreSQL. And the next one is for us to help us aid in styling, which is turbolinks. So we need to skip turbolinks just because it actually conflicts with our styling. So make sure you have both of those starting off. And that's also in your debug or your Rails references in the debugging sheets. It will tell you this as well. Let me show you where that is as this is running. So instead of the Rails references, it's just this first one right here. And also while this is running, let's go ahead and make a GitHub repo. And let's go ahead and create it here so we're able to use it later on. So this is Rails LMS. And I'm just going to take the SSH here. Okay, what is our housekeeping items after we CD into our project?
Update our gem file.
Yeah, let's go ahead and update our gem file. So we actually have two gems that we are going to use. And in addition, I'll add one more gem. And this has nothing to do with associations. This is just something else you can do just to play around with your data. So the first one, I'm going to zoom in just a bit, is inside of the gem file. When you are ready, you would have pry, and then you would also have your styling library. And let's just use semantic UI again, and it will be SAS. And then we'll also have one more gem, and I'll introduce this gem a little bit later, but the gem is called Faker. Just a one-liner of what Faker is. It allows us to play around with fake data. So make sure you at least have these two gems in your project. We may or may not be using pry.
Does it generate fake data, or does it do something else?
It will help us generate fake data. Yep.
Okay.
And I'll show you a little bit more about that. So let's go ahead and run a bundle so we can install all of those gems. And then we also need to do any gem configurations. The only gem configurations we need to do is for the styling library. And just as a reminder, it is all the way up in inside of the app assets style sheets. And we are going to rename this to SCSS because it now uses SAS. And then we are also going to import semantic here, semantic UI. And it does need a semicolon here since it is SCSS. And that's the only configurations we need to do for now for our gems. So make sure you have this inside of your app assets at style sheets and application.scss.
Henry, could you show me the gem file real quick?
Yes.
Oh, interesting. I just got an error code that says cannot locate gem file, which is a little bit strange.
And you're inside of your project?
I can, maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah, with that error, that means that you're inside of either not inside of your project, or you might be not in a Rails project.
Yeah, that is correct. So I only changed directory into Rails LMS and not Rails LMS Summer 20. So that solves it. Thanks.
Yep.
Silly me.
So what other housekeeping items we need to get done?
Create our database.
Yeah, let's go ahead and create our database. So bundle exec Rails db create. And then one more housekeeping item.
Push it to get.
Yeah, let's go ahead and push it to get. So we'll do get add get commit -m. And this is also where you would go into GitHub and add your contributors if you are working in the group. Get remote add origin, paste the origin. That is not the origin. Let me go ahead and re-grab the origin. Again, the origin is the endpoint inside of your SSH get right here. And origin is the name of what we're calling that remote. So when we are saying get push origin master, what we're actually doing is that we're pushing everything in our master branch into origin, which is this repo here. Awesome. So we already planned out our database here. We just need to build it out. So let's go ahead and build out all of our models. And then we'll also go ahead and see what we can do with both of those. So just know that when we are building out our models, this one and this one are parents, and then this one is the child of both of these parents here. So it belongs to both the user and the courses. So we'll do one at a time. So let's go ahead and do bundle exact Rails G model. And for the user's model, it will be user singular. And user has a first name and last name. For now, that's it. So that is the user's model.
Henry, I have a question. Does it matter if you capitalize user?
Right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be either lowercase or uppercase.
Okay.
These ones afterwards do matter if you use uppercase or lowercase. So be careful with that, especially if you do belongs to. That one has to be lowercase. It can't be uppercase.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And at this point, I'm going to generate my other models. So I'm not going to migrate immediately. So I'm going to do that right after I have my other models. So let's go ahead and create the other model of course. So bundle exact Rails G model, and this will be course. And course only has a name. I like that.
You're missing the exact after bundle.
Oh, thank you. There we go. So that is the course model there. And then we have our last one, which is enrollment. And that one has a role, and it belongs to both the user and the course. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to do a bundle exact Rails G model. And this one is going to be called enrollment. I chose enrollment because a better use case might be like a class or something, but class is a reserved word. So again, be sure to check your naming because it might be a reserved word or not. So with that. So with enrollments, it has a role, default to a string. But the other thing is that it belongs to both the user, and again, notice how this is lowercase user, and it's also singular. So make sure you have it exactly lowercase and singular like that. And also, it belongs to a course because of the advanced association. So enrollments is acting as our through table. And now we're able to migrate. So we're able to do a bundle exact rake db migrate. Now we'll apply everything to our database. Just to expand a little bit, now I'm going to go a little bit off topic. If at this point you forgot to create your database, you can actually do this all in one line. So if you already built out your models, but you forgot to create right before, you can actually do this like this. So you can do bundles exec rake db create and then db migrate. This will create it first and then migrate all those changes like that. The other thing that you may do is that sometimes if you mess up on your models or inside of your migrations or anything like that, and you already migrated those changes, that is now stuck inside of your database because it ran all those files already. So even though that you did change it with a migration or anything like that, those changes are already applied to your database. So to help fix that is that you would need to make those changes, but don't migrate those changes because it won't override it like you think. What you need to do is after you fix those changes, you would actually do this. And I would do this at the very beginning of your project. And it will be bundle exec rake db drop, create, and migrate. What this will do is this will drop your database with all those changes, and assuming that all those changes are applied and they're incorrect. And then it'll recreate a fresh new database for you and then apply the right migration files there. So this is what you would need to do if you have changes that are already applied into your database. It's basically starting fresh. But don't run this. Well, if you do run this, it won't do anything. It will actually redo everything we did thus far. So that's just for your information. So now let's go ahead and go into our code and let's go ahead and mark out the associations. So if we go into our user, the way this works is that because of the crazy associations, user has many enrollments, plural, because it has many, and it also has many courses as well. And this course is also plural. But when we are doing it with courses, this is going to be through enrollments. It'll be through whatever other table that is used for our through table. Just like that. So user has many enrollments. User also has many courses through enrollments. And we need to do a similar thing with courses as well. But let me show you this inside of our table here. So user has many enrollments, and user also has many courses through enrollments, like that. It's a little bit mind-boggling. So then now let's go into our courses, and we'll do a similar thing with that. Courses also has many enrollments. And courses also has many users through enrollments. And this is the symbol for that. So for courses, courses has many enrollments, and courses has many users through enrollments. And then with enrollments, the associations with that is that it belongs to both the user and the course. So enrollments belong to both the user and the course, like that. So typically when you're drawing out your tables, an arrow and where it's pointing to is pointing to what is the parent in that case. So you can see that this is belongs to both the user and to the courses. Okay. And that's how we set up our advanced associations, is that we have, for user, we have has many enrollments, has many courses through enrollments. We're doing a has many through association here. And then for course, we're doing the opposite. So has many enrollments, has many user through enrollments, and enrollments just belong to both of those. Just like that. Awesome. So after that, I'm going to go ahead and let's actually go into the DB folder. And then we'll go into the schema here. And you can see that enrollments has both the course ID and the user ID because it belongs to both the user and the course there. But let's actually go ahead and go into the seeds file. And let me tell you a little bit about the seeds file and where we can use our tool that we imported called Faker. So with the seeds file, what you're able to do is you are able to write Ruby code in here. And essentially what this would be is that you're able to create records when you run this file. So we can actually have individual records inside of our database for us to play around with. Technically, you can still do the same thing inside of your console, but then you're not going to sit there all day building like 50 records just to play around with, right? So a better way to do is actually in the C's file here. So let's go ahead and see what we can do with this particular case. So this is just a regular Ruby file. So I'm just going to have an array called roles. And the roles that it will have is teacher, TA, and student.
Henry, can we do that like modulus W instead of like putting all the quotes around it as well? That little like shortcut.
Oh, yeah. You can write your arrays like that too. So if you do it like this, and then inside of here, you can have all of them too. Yep. And then I'm going to do a loop called 10 times loop. So I'm actually going to create 10 things. So the first thing I'm going to create is I need to set a local variable called course here. And this will be capital course dot create. And this is where the fun part comes in, because this is where we are bringing in our tool. So course has a name. And technically you can have like all the course be the same name if you want, or you can have the course be like course 1, course 2, course 3. But you can actually have a little bit more fun with this. And that goes along with our gem here. So essentially what Faker is, and again, if you are looking it up, it's the Faker gem, or else you'll get some sort of League of Legends guy. So this here is the Faker gem. And essentially all it is a whole database full of fake data for you to use. So for example, here are all of the categories. So you have like fake data of addresses, bank, beer, business, Chuck Norris, coffee, and a bunch of other ones like that too, like funny name, hipster, military. And they're all broken up to different categories, like books, creatures, games if you wanted to, anime, movies, music, etc. So instead of you coming up with like a bunch of fake data, you can actually just use the gem of Faker just to help you out with that. So for the course name, what Faker data should we choose? And let me go ahead and slack this out for your reference. For a good course name, any picks? Anything stands out?
Do science.
Science? Sure. Let's go ahead and do science. And this, after you choose the category, you then click on it, and then it'll show you how to use it and what you are able to have with it. So we can do elements, we can do element symbol, or we can do scientist. Well, out of element and scientist, which one should we choose?
Scientist.
Let's go ahead and do scientist. So what this will do is that in the back end, which is how they build this out, they have a whole array of scientists for you to choose from. And what this does is that it does like a dot sample. So it just grabs a random scientist from that array inside of their library. So let's go ahead and use that. So instead of being boring, we're actually going to use Faker here. And then we're just going to do : capital S science. Science. Yep. And then we're doing a dot scientist. That looks weird. Yeah, that looks like.
More words look weird to me in this course than ever in my life.
Yep. I'm just going to copy this, paste it just for assurance. Okay, we spelled it right. I don't know. I feel like the I is in the wrong place there. Okay, so that's what we're able to do with the course. So let's go ahead and then continue on. So I'm going to create 10 courses, but within this course, I'm going to do this 5 times. Do end. So for each of the course, I'm going to create 5 users as well as 5 enrollments. So I'm going to go ahead and create our user here. And user has first name and last name. And then we'll be picking that up with Faker as well. So let's go ahead and go back into Faker and see what we can use for a first name and our last name.
That's a little bit confusing to me because, like, how do you, if you just choose science, like, how do you know? I mean, like, science could be a lot of things, right? Like, so
if you click on this, this will give you an example over here of what it gives you here.
So
It's just giving you names.
It's literally just the name in that case, not.
Yep.
Okay. So that's basically what you have to go by. Okay.
Yep. So
I
what
think
should we
we'll
do?
artists,
Artists?
like art and science. I don't know. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. You are able to add on to this. Like if you think that you have a little bit more knowledge about Rick and Morty, you can add on to their database as well. So what should we do for name?
Hey, Rick's the best scientist in the galaxy. All right.
Should we do Rick and Morty
Multiverse.
for the name? Sure.
Sure.
Let's do Rick and Morty characters then. So it'll be Faker TV show Rick and Morty .character. So that's going to be the first name. It'll be a long first name. And then what are we having for the last name?
Use Zelda characters.
Oh,
Sure.
good call.
That would be in games, Zelda here, and we'll do Zelda character as the last name. And notice I have a comma after each key value pair because there's more than one there. And then still inside of the 5 times loop, I am going to finally create our enrollment dot create. And then the role would actually be the roles that we specified here, dot sample. So it'll be roles dot sample. And for the, since it belongs to both of those, I am going to use my course and user variable to my advantage there. So for the course ID, it would be course the one that we created every time we loop through it, .id. And the user ID would be the user every time that we create and loop through it, the user's ID. Just like that.
And those don't need to be an instance.
No. Yeah, I think you still have access to it. And we'll go ahead and put a message here saying that our data is seeded. And that's how we know when our items are fully in our database. So here is the seeds file. Again, that's in your DB folder, seeds. And this helps us to create a bunch of records to play around with super quick. So that's how you would define a seeds file. Is you will go into your seeds file. You need to do some sort of a loop, and then you're able to create users, enrollments, and courses, or whatever record it is that you want to inside of this file. But for this to actually work, you need to have this applied into your database. So if that's the case, then what you would do is you would do a bundle exec break db. I messed up. Bundle exec break db seed. What this will do is it will go inside of your seeds file and it will run it top to bottom. And if there are errors, it'll tell you, but if there aren't, it'll just apply those changes. And as you can see here, it actually did our put statement of data seeded. So it actually reached to the bottom of that page there. The other thing is that since this is a DB command, we can actually pair it off with our other DB commands. So typically, if you are working with someone and they already have a seeds file, if you want to have the same data, I would have one person, or you can collaborate on filling out the seeds file so you can all have the same data. And what you would do is that you would push your project up to GitHub. So you have the seeds file and everything inside of GitHub. And all of your partners, what they would do is that if they haven't created their database and all that, they would first have to clone the project. And then this is what you would run for everyone else. So it'll be bundle exec, db create, db migrate, and db seed. What this will do is that for all your partners that don't have a database yet or just clone it down off of GitHub, it'll then create a database, migrate all of those changes inside of your database, and then run a seeds file. So that way all of the data is very similar in every single one of your databases. So that's what you would do in that case.
Can I see your seeds file again?
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Awesome. So just for a sanity check, we'll see this a little bit later on once we flush out the views page. But I'm going to show you inside of my database what the seeds file did. So I'm going to go into my console, and I'm going to take a look at all the user.all. The user.all will bring in a whole array of objects, and as you can see here, I have a bunch of fake data here. So first name Dr. Glip Glop, last name Kinguran. And another one right here, like that. And yours should look different than mine, just because it'll do a dot sample at different items there. And I can also do the same thing for course.all. This will be all of the courses in our database. And this is just name of scientist. That is a long name. Wow. Joseph Thomas, William Awesome. I don't think I heard of majority of these people.
Oppenheimer's the father of the nuclear bomb.
This one?
J. Robert Oppenheimer,
A upper.
the
Oh.
Manhattan Project.
Nice. Sweet. And as for the enrollments, that just belongs to both courses and users, and they just have each of the roles. So there's nothing to see much with that.
So this will generate different sets of data if you do DVC, like different users do that?
Yep, this will generate different data. If you want the same data, then you would have to have this not by Faker, and it will be hard-coded at that point.
Gotcha.
Yep. And the other thing is that if you do a DB seed again, that will run the seeds file again. So now instead of having 10 courses, you'll now have 10 more courses. So this, every time you run this, that will always run your seeds file. And then every time you drop your database, that will also drop everything with your tables. It will also drop everything that you generate with your seeds file and all of the migrations. So that's what's going on there. And then inside of your hackathon, you may have a seeds file given for you, or you may have to create it yourself. So that's just another tool that you can use. Okay. So that is the seeds file. Any questions about the seeds file before we go into controllers? Awesome. So let's go ahead and generate our controllers. And today will actually be a lot more smooth than yesterday, and even more smooth than Rails day one. So let's, I'm just going to generate the users and courses controller first, and then later on we'll just go ahead and generate enrollments and see how that is different. So let's go ahead and generate our user one. So it'll be bundle exec Rails G controller. And this is going to be the user's controller. And again, you can capitalize or leave it lowercase for the controller name. And it will have an index, show, edit, and new. And I'm going to skip our routes because we'll be generating our own routes, not using the one that Rails generates for us. And then these actions here, those are actions that actually have pages. So that is the index page, show page, and then the two forms. The other ones like create, update, and destroy, they don't have pages. They actually apply to the model. So we don't need to generate pages for that. So let's go ahead and do the same thing for the courses. So for the courses, it will be bundle exec Rails G controller courses controller, and this will also have index, show, new, and edit. And we are also going to skip routes here. Okay, and those are our two controllers thus far. Again, we'll do enrollments a little bit later. So after you generate your controllers, let's go ahead and go into our routes. And what the routes are essentially is that, let's go to config folder and routes.rb, is that they are certain URL patterns that the web browser follows, and that will lead you to somewhere inside of the controller. So for both of our controllers, we actually need routes associated to them. So for the first one, we are going to have resources user. And then the other one is going to be resources courses. And notice how these are two different types of resources just because these aren't parent and child. They're both parents in this case, so they'll actually be separate. And then something else to work with is that we also need to have a home page instead of the default Rails page. So it's a good idea to have a root route, which in our case, let's just have it to look at all of the courses. So we'll go into the courses index route. So it'll be the courses controller index action. And that is inside of your config routes there. So what controller do you all want to tackle first, the user or the course controller?
Users.
Okay, let's go ahead and go into the users controller. So I'm going to pull up our pattern here because there is a pattern for all of the controllers.
Henry,
Yes.
could you paste the config routes
Oh,
in Slack again, please?
awkward. I only pasted the other one. There we go. Sorry about that.
Thank you, good man.
So let's go ahead and pull up the pattern. And the pattern we're looking for is the controller pattern here. But just to clean up our code a bit, what should we have at the very top?
Before actions.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do a callback. And in our case, it's going to be a before action. And I'm going to call it set user because we are technically setting the user. And we are only going to have this in our show, edit, update, and destroy. And I'll put this on another line for you all to see it better. But you can have that in one line. And let's go ahead and define that below. So this will be def set user. And what is set user in this case? What is the common code that we typically need to do over and over again? And the show, edit, update, and destroy.
Model name dot find params :ID.
So for the user's case, what is the model name?
User.
Yeah, it will be user equals capital U user dot find. In this case, it will be params :ID. So we need to find a specific user. Awesome. So now following the pattern, let's go ahead and build out all of our stuff here. So what would the index look like?
At user
Yep.
equal
At users
capital user dot all.
equals capital user dot all. And then show is blank because it's handled by our set user before action there. But what about the new? What would the new look like?
At user equals user dot new.
At user equals capital U user dot new. And then let's go ahead and have our other CRUD action that follows new, which is create. And with create, it has an if else conditional. But before that, what do we have here?
At user equals capital user dot new
user underscore param.
Exactly. So it'll be at user equals capital user dot new with user params. And let's go ahead and answer that or define what that is with user params. And those are the permitted parameters that we are allowing to get into the model. So what would this look like? And this one actually never changes with the pattern.
Params dot require.
Yep, params dot require.
Colon user
Yep,
dot permit. And
what are
then
we permitting?
first name, last name.
Yep, the user has a first name and last name. Essentially, this would be whatever that model has as columns. And let me go ahead and put that there. And let's go ahead and finish off our create. So what is the condition?
If user dot save.
Yes. At user.saves, we'll take them somewhere. And I'm actually going to take them to the show page, which is going to be redirected to at user. So that will take them to the new user that's created. And then what is the else?
Render new.
Yep, render new. Something that I forgot is that with our new and edit, we are actually going to render out a partial called form. So we'll be doing that. Something I also forgot to mention is that when you are styling your form, for some reason you can't style partials. So it should be another way for you to style partials, but you can't really do it with what we learned. So let's go ahead and do the update. So what would the update be? Instead of our conditional, because the first part here is actually handled with our before action. So we can just go to the second line here, which is someone else that hasn't answered yet. Anyone?
If at user dot update and user param underscore params.
Yep. It'll be user.update with user params. And then let's actually go ahead and redirect to the user, the updated user. And then what's the else?
Render edit.
Awesome. And let's go ahead and do our destroy. And one more person to finish off the user's controller.
Would it be at user dot destroy?
Yep, at user dot destroy. And in this case, we can't take them to at user because that user has been deleted. So we are actually going to redirect to the index. So let's actually run our server. I just did a Control-Shift-D to do a new panel, or you can do Command-T that opens it in a new tab. So you can do either of those options. And for this bottom one, I'm going to run my server. So going to do a Rails S here. So let's take a look at our routes. And then inside of your localhost 3000/rails/info/routes, let me go ahead and select this out. It would be updated to what we have here. So if I want to go to the users index, that would be the users path here. So I'm going to do users path like that. Okay. Awesome. Our controller is starting to get easier and easier to create now with that pattern.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, the first day of Rails, it just looks like a lot of random things, but now you'll start to see a pattern. So let's go ahead and go into our first break. Let's come back at 7:15. So thus far, we go into advanced association. So we listed out all the models and their association with that. And then we also started on our C's file, which gives us fake data for us to play around with. And then finally, we got into our first controller, which is the users controller. So let's actually go ahead and continue on, and we'll go into the next controller, which is the courses controller, which this is also the same design as the users controller, being that this one is also the parent. So I am going to follow the same exact pattern as what we have here for the controller for the courses. So let's go ahead and go into that. So at the very top, I'm going to have it be a before action here, set course. And this set course will be for only the show, edit, and new. I'm just kidding. It's show, edit, update, and destroy. And we will define that towards the bottom, and only has a colon like that. And inside of the private portion, we are going to have our set course here, which is going to be the common course or the common code where we find each of the course here. So it will be at course equals course, capital C course dot find params ID, like so. So then following the pattern, it will be at courses equals capital C course dot all. And show could be blank. And here for new, I'll do at course equals capital C course dot new. And I'm also going to render out my partial here as well. So partial is going to be called form. And I'll do the same thing inside my edit. And then going into the create, so def create and just scroll down just for a bit. And this is at course equals course dot new with the course params, like so. And let's go ahead and define the course params in the lower portion here. So it would be course params will equal params dot require. It will be params. Yeah, I was right. Params dot require. And we have our course model here. Dot permit And a course only has a name. To finish off our items here is that if at course exists or if at course saves, then let's go ahead and redirect to that course that we just created. Else, just going to render new. And then let's go ahead and finish up our CRUD actions with update and destroy. So for update, we have a conditional of if at course dot update with the course params. Else, and I am going to redirect back to the updated course, or I'm going to render the edit form. And finally, for our destroy action here, for our final CRUD action, we are going to go ahead and do at course dot destroy. And then with this, I'm going to redirect back to the course index page. But there's actually two paths to lead to there. So the first one to go to the index is going to be the courses plural path. And the other way you can go to it is that since that is our root path that we specified in our routes, we can actually just go to the root path here. So this will be redirect to our root path. So there's two ways to go to the same location for our example here. So this is the courses controller. So app controllers.
Did we create the destroy in users?
Let me double check. Yes, we did.
Okay. Cool.
There is the course controller. And again, we're just following it with having both of them be the parent. Okay, let's now go into the views. Any questions about how we filled out the users or the courses? Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and create a nav bar, because if we go to localhost 3000 here, all we see is just the default pages that Rails gives for us. So just to create some navigation, instead of having just buttons at every single page or having to utilize the URL or like the back and forth button, I'm just gonna have a navigational bar. And with the navigational bar, it needs to be on every single page. And what is that called when we have a shared view? What kind of file is that?
A partial.
Yeah, it's called a partial. So with this partial, I'm going to create it inside of an app views layouts. And this is where I'm going to have the nav bar, just because I want to have it globally. And this is where our code is going to render towards the end. And then what is the symbol that all partials start with?
Underscore.
Yep, an underscore. So in our case, it will be a underscore navbar.html.erb, since we both need Ruby and HTML for that. Again, make sure you're in app views layouts navbar. Here's the breadcrumbs. So I'm going to have a nav here. And I believe inside of semantic, if you build out your navbar like this, it will default to it. So that will work like so. So this would be a UL, LIs, and within the LI is going to be our link twos. So I'm going to have that, and I'm just going to stub out all of our items, and then we'll start to fill them out one by one. So I'm going to have 4 links for now. The first link is that it will go into all of the courses. And what path is that? We want to go to all of the courses. The index here. So for our case, it could be root path or it could be courses path. We can use either one of those. So I'm going to just use courses path here. And then this one would be a link to add a course. So this would be add course. And what is the link for us to go to the new action here? For the course, it would be new course path, like so. And I'm going to do the same thing for the users as well. So this would be users plural path. And then this one to add a user. Oh, that looks weird. There we go. To add a user, it would be new users path. So you can kind of see a pattern with the pathing naming that they do with the Rails. And this is the nav bar. So it's in app views, layouts, and underscore nav bar. Just like so. But that's how we define it. We still need to implement that inside of our views because it's not really there yet. So to implement it, where you would go is that we want to have this in every single page. And if that's the case, then we need to go into our app views layouts application.html.erb. And with this yield, everything will be rendered inside of this yield tag here. And with that yield tag, that's where all the content with the views will be displayed. So if I want a nav bar, I'm actually going to go ahead and render out the nav bar right here. So it'll be render layouts nav bar. So then you'll get a nav bar over here like so. And I'm also going to have my content be inside of a container, and that would be a class of UI container. Again, that really depends on what library you're using. For like Bootstrap and Materialize, it might just be just container. So make sure you follow the documentation for that, for whatever style library you're using. So this is the same thing that you'll be doing for if you do have a nav bar. And if you want a footer, it would just be under the yield tag. So that would be under the yield tag if you have a footer. And let me sort this out. Okay. And that will push everything to the outside with margins. So let's go ahead and build out our courses views. And we'll probably won't do all of the CRUD actions. We probably just will do all of them except for update and delete. But we might do delete for one of them, not for all of them. So I'm actually going to close out everything just so we can start fresh. And I'm actually going to start off with the courses index page, because that is initially where we will be ending up with when we launch our website. So it'll be app views, courses, and index.html.erd here. So I'm just going to have this say courses, and you can style this a little bit more. So I can have like a class of UI header. And what I will also do is that with this, I am going to have a conditional. And depending on the condition, this will show this or not. So this is conditional rendering. So depending on the condition, this will either show something or it won't. And I'm going to use a ternary operator to do this. And usually with conditional rendering, you would actually going to use a ternary operator rather than like a if else. So my condition is that if courses, the variable inside of my controller, which is an array of all the courses, right? If courses.length is less than or equal to 0, then I'm going to say no courses here. Else, I'll just give an empty string like that. So that lets the user know that if there aren't any courses, then it will give them a message. It looks like I have a syntax error. Let me go ahead and look at it.
It's a quotation mismatch.
Yeah, thank you. Here we go. There we go. So that way, when this runs, it will actually let the user know that instead of just showing blank, it will actually give you a message of there is no courses. But in our cases, there are courses, and we just need to display them accordingly. So I'm just going to do it inside of a UL. You can do it multiple ways by styling it with a table or anything like that. But for simplicity, I am just going to do it here. So at courses.each do. So we're going through each of the courses, referencing each one of those as course. And I am going to have a list item for it to go into the show page. So to go into the show page, it will be an echoing tag where we have a link to the course's name, which will then be displayed. And then I am just going to go into the course here. So I'm passing in the object of what I am looping through, and that will then give them an ID for Rails to use for the show page. And now this will display all of the courses inside of my database after I refresh. There you go. It thinks that it's German because most of the names are German. There we go. And these are just coming straight from my database, and the data is from Faker itself. So if you have different courses names than mine, that's totally fine. That is just pulling from different data sets. Awesome. So what page should we work on next? The show page or the add course page?
Can you go back to your index page real quick?
Yep. Actually, based on the lecture, we're probably going to do the new, the form itself next. So again, if you are having partials, you're not able to style it. But if you want to style your forms, then you would just type your form in here. And since you're using the same form for both edit and new, you would have to just copy that so it will be consistent styles. So that's totally up to you. It's a little bit more work just to get it looking good. But for our case, we can just have a partial form .html.erb, and we'll fill this out. So it'll be h1 add a course. And then we'll have a echoing tag. Three of them after the first one, and then a non-echoing tag for the end to fill it out. So then to fill out your form, you can do like a form for at course equals, well, never mind. It will be do f like that, like so, and then end it before you forget. So the other way is that if you want to copy and paste your forms for it to be styled, there is a way for you to have this form styled as well. And you actually don't use form for, you're using it something differently. So let me show you what that looks like. It will be form with, it does the same exact thing. It's just written in a different way. And the model we are having is course, local is true. And let's say that you also have like a class you wanted to have. For semantic, it's called UI form. And then you can do like your do F like so. So that is the alternative way if you do want it to be styled. I'm just going to comment that out because that will break. And if you want to style the individual inputs, I'll show you how you can do that as well. So you might have to wrap your items inside of a div for it to work, and that's totally fine. So we'll have a f.label for name and a f.text field for name. And we'll have some front-end validations of required true. And you can also have other things like a placeholder if you wanted to, which is text inside of the box. And I'll just say like course name. If you want to have the submit button styled, it'll be f.submit. And then what you want it to say, by default, we'll have it be nil because we're just following whatever Rails want it to be. And it will be class of whatever class name button you want, like UI blue button, something like that. Again, this won't work because this is a partial. So this will only work if you don't have it as a partial, and it will be directly inside of the new and the edit. And I don't think this will apply any styles there because of the partial, even though we have the class of UI blue button here. So yeah, just note that if you do have partials, you can't style it. Okay, so let's test this out and see if this form works. So I'm going to add a course. And it looks like it did right there. But I'm curious on why. Oh, okay. Yeah. The other reason to not use a partial is that if you go to the partial form, it doesn't load the other partial of the nav bar, which kind of sucks. Okay, so let's do a similar thing for the user as well. But we're actually going to go into the models just to help us out a bit.
Why doesn't it load the nav bar?
Because it's a partial, loading another partial. Yeah, it's a Rails thing. So let's go into the user's model. So inside of app models user, and we're actually going to have some logic. And if you want any logic, it will be inside of the models. So that's the term for fat model skinny controllers, meaning that if any other logic besides actions, that will be inside of your models here. So for our case, I'm going to have a helper method which prints out the full name of a string of the interpolated value. And self means that it's the object that we are calling dot first name. And I am doing it like this. So self dot first name, self dot last name here. That way, instead of having both of those together, I can just call this helper function here. So now let's go ahead and move on into the user's views. And then we'll see how far we can get with that. So with the user's views, I am going to start off with the index. And here is the page that we'll be working in. So I'm just going to have this say users, plural. And in addition to this, I am going to loop through all of the users. With all of the users, I'm going to list them out with the show link like so. So this will be at users.each, which is all the users inside of the array. And for each of those, I'm going to list them out in a link to tag. So li link to, and instead of saying user.first name and user.last name, I can just say user.full name, which is the method that we created in our model here, which will give us both inside of a string, the name and the first name and the last name. And then since we're going to the show page, we can just say user there. So this will list out all the users and it will print out their full name. And the really cool thing about this is that we can use this in any single one of these files because it pertains to the user's model. So let's go ahead and work inside of the user's form, which is another partial. actually, for this way, do you want to see what it looks like if we do have it styled?
Yes.
Okay. So if that's the case, I'm actually going to change my user's controller to not render a partial then. So I'm going to change that to not render any partials. So this is now your user's controller. So if that's the case, then I'm going to have it be inside of the new. This will be a new user. And with this, I'm just going to have this styled. So we'll be using a little bit different syntax with that. So let me build out all of my echoing tags. So we need 2 for the first name, 2 for the last name, 1 more for the submit button, and then a none for the end. Okay. So to have this styled, we'll do it with a form with model name would be @user, local true. And then I'm going to have this be a class of UI form. And this will also be do F here. And then the other thing that it requires you to do is that you'll have to have your items be inside of a div tag and with the class name of div, with the class name of field. So I'll have that as well. And ending div tag like this. And I'm actually going to duplicate this and delete the other one. And that's just for additional styles. So I'll do my f.label is our first name. That looks weird. There we go. And f.text field first name. And we'll also have some front-end validations required true. And we can do like something else other than a placeholder. It's called autofocus. And what that means is that if you land on the form, your cursor will already be inside of this box here. So you can have that option if you want as well. And we'll do the same thing for the last name. The only thing with autofocus, it only works for one field. So I would choose one or the other fields. It wouldn't work for both of them because you only have one cursor. So we'll do text field. And this is for last name. And this will be required true. And let's go ahead and style our submit button. So it'll be f.submit. First argument is what the submit button says. We're just going to have that be nil because Rails will take care of that for us. And whatever class you want it to be. And this could be your own custom class, or you can use your style library custom class there. Button, like that. So this is inside of your new.html.erb. We're not using a partial for this controller, just so we can see the difference between the two. So make sure you have this in your new there. And if you want to use the same form with the same styles, I would just copy this inside of your edit form here. So inside of your edit, it will be like that. And I'm just going to change the header and say edit user. Same exact form. So now let's actually try that. Let's create a user and let's see what that will look like. So this one will give us all the users, and I have quite a lot of users. So let's go ahead and create a user and see that we have here, since the form isn't a partial, we have the navbar at the very top. And also our form is also styled compared to the course form here, right? So there's advantages and disadvantages of using partials. So let's go ahead and create a user, Bob Smith, sure. And let's go to users, and there is our user there. So let's do one more page, and then we'll go on to our final break. And this time we'll go into the show for the users. So it'll be what we see when we click on an individual user like so. So if that's the case, then we are going inside of the show for users. Make sure you're doing it for users. And here at the top here, I am going to have an echoing tag of our helper method of @user, which is the user that it's being passed through, .full name, just like so. And all of those details, but the only details that a user has is their first name and last name. Okay. Something else that I will have is a separator, and I'm going to list out all the courses that belong to this user. So because of the associations, I'm allowed to do this because of the has many through. So to print out all the courses here, I'll do like courses here, like so. I would have that conditional render message of if the user didn't have a course, I would urge the user to have a course here, but we'll skip that step here. So here, I am going to loop through all of the user's courses. And here's the cool part. So I'm going to do a loop. And what we're looping through is that if we do it @user.courses, because of the associations, this will bring in all the courses that belong to that user. And what I'm doing with that is looping through each of those courses, referencing each one of those as a course. And within that, I am going to display the course show page. So that would be a link to tag. Course has a name, and we are going to the show page of that course. So this will list all of the courses that this user has because of the association. Okay, so if I refresh my page, it looks like this person only belongs to this course here. And then if you click on someone else, it belongs to that course there. Sweet. And if we click in it, it'll go into the course show page, which we will need to build out. So that's one of the cool things with our has many through, is that we can grab all the courses like so. Even though this is a parent component, we can still grab it like so here. So I'm actually going to do a BR, which is just like a space. And let's actually do one other CRUD action here, which is going to be a delete. So this will delete a user. So with this, I need to pass in the user here. And then I have a method of delete. And if I want to style a link to, I can do a comma after and do a class of UI red button. That works as well. So you're able to style it if you want. So let's go ahead and have this inside of our show page, and we'll see what's going on once we try to delete something. So inside of our user show page, it will have this button here. But when we click on this button, what we want to happen is that it will delete the user, right? But what we actually happen at this point in time is that we actually have a foreign key violation. A foreign key violation when we try to delete this. The reason being, because of the association, it doesn't want us to destroy this user because it isn't. It's also dependent on a lot of other things. So if we delete the user, we don't also want to delete the course as well. We just want to delete the user. So we need to specify that inside of our models so it knows which one that we're deleting. Thus, it deletes just the user, not everything that pertains to that user there. So we actually need to delete what connects them both together. And that is inside of enrollments for both of the models. So we go inside of your models, go into user, and for the has many here, we need to do a dependent destroy. So we need to do a dependent destroy here. As well as inside of your course, it will also be inside of the enrollments there as well. So make sure you have it for both the course model and the user's model, only for the enrollments. Because we're not deleting both the user and the course when we press delete, we're just deleting the enrollments that attach them both together. So this is the course model. And this is the user's model. Notice how I don't have dependent destroy here, because that will try to delete both the course and the user if we do delete, and we don't want that at this point in time. So now if we try it, I'm able to do delete and that user is gone. I forgot what the person's name is, but let me go ahead and try to delete Bob Smith, delete the user, and Bob Smith is not here anymore. So when you are deleting, you would need to have this attached into your through model at this point with this association. Any questions about that? Okay. Let's actually go on into our final break. And then when we come back into our break, we'll go ahead and take care of enrollments. And that will actually be displayed here inside of the course show page here. So that's where we'll pick up from our final break. So I'll see you all in a little bit. Let's come back at 8:15. So let's go in to the final stretch, and then let's wrap up our items with the enrollments now. So with the enrollments, I believe we created a model. Yep, enrollments model. It belongs to both the user and the course. So we're able to write our controller to have this be a child. But something else I will have to decide is that we need to decide where we'll be displaying the enrollment information. And technically you can put it in both, but for our specific case, I want it in the course show page. If it is in the course show page or if it's in the user show page, it will be whatever page or model or controller that is in inside of the routes. So here, since I wanted to have it be in the course here, then it will be the do resources enrollments here. So this is your routes. And again, this is depending on your application. I just want this to show in my courses show page. Awesome. So with this, let's go ahead and generate our controller. And I am going to generate it a little bit differently. So I'll do a bundle exec Rails G controller. And for this controller, I am going to have it be called enrollments, plural. And I'm only going to have the index and new action. And I'll also am skipping routes as well. So that's just my call. If I don't want to have the user be able to update or delete a enrollment, then you can make that call as well. But for ours, you're able to look at all of them as well as to create an enrollment. So we're not going to have the other CRUD actions here.
Henry, if you put them there and then decide not to use them, does it hurt?
Nope.
Okay.
So if you do have show and edit, but you're not using them, that would generate the view still, but you're not having it point to there. So it would still technically work. Yep. So inside of my courses controller, I mean, not courses, enrollments controller, I'm going to start to fill this out. And starting off, I need to, because of the way the routes are set up, all of the routes for enrollments depend on the course itself. So anywhere I go with enrollments, I need to have a course and the course ID. So because of that, I am going to do a callback of the for action. And this will happen through all of the actions that are below. So we don't need to specify that it needs to go to a specific action. This will actually run for all of them. And I am going to do a set course. And with the set course, I'm going to find it here, set course. And this will be at course equals capital C course dot find params. But in this case, it's going to be the parent's ID. So it'll be course ID like so. And again, the reason for that is here we are referencing to the course ID here for all of the routes. We can't put ID here because what ID represents in this controller is the enrollments ID. And that will actually lead you into the wrong course if it were that case. So that's why this is having to be the parent's controller for the routes. I'm actually going to do the index a little bit different. Instead of having at enrollments, so I'll do it how you should be doing it. So at enrollments equals at course dot enrollments. This will show all of the enrollments, which we are going to do that, but I actually want to specify a little bit more because the enrollments itself will have different roles. And depending on the roles, I want to show each of the roles separately. So for each of the roles, we have teachers, and for the teacher, it will be at course dot enrollments dot where the role is going to be teacher here. And I'm doing that 2 more times for TAs where the role is TA, and then one last time for students for role as students here. So if I want to show all of the enrollments, I can do it like that, or I can specify it depending on which role I want to have here. And again, that's just my call for this. So this is a parent to child relationship. So when I fill out the controller, the parent is course, so it'll be at course, and then the child is enrollments. And then for the create I am going to have the same thing. So at enrollment equals at course.enrollment dot new with the enrollment params. And let's go ahead and define that before I forget. So def enrollment params, and this will be params dot require enrollment dot permit, and I am permitting a role. And for this specific case, I am also going to permit the user's ID. And you'll start to see why a little bit later when we build out the form. Because I also want to connect whoever role it is, that will also be attached to the user ID as well. So for this particular project, I do need the user ID because I need that information for the role. So then let's continue on with our create, and let's scroll down just a bit. So if at enrollment dot saves else and I am going to take them to be redirected to the course or the enrollments index page. So if that's the case, I want to go to this controller index action, then it will be course enrollments path, and I need to pass in the ID. So that would be course underscore enrollment plural path, and I need to pass in the ID here for course. Else I'm going to render new. I'm not going to do an edit or update, just so we're skipping that CRUD action because of this project. I am going to do a destroy. And when we do destroy, it would be at course enrollments plural dot find params ID dot destroy. And I'm also going to redirect back to the index of the enrollments path here as well. Later on, when we are building out our form, I actually need something else here. And I'm going to put that inside of the new here. So inside of the new, I'm going to create another variable called users. And this one will be all of the users that is not in this course. And how we write that is like this. So this variable, it stands for all the users that are not in this course. So what we're doing is that we are taking all the users and we are subtracting the users that are already in this course. Thus, that will give us users that are not in this course. That's just to help us with our form later on. Okay, so now let me go ahead and slack out my controller for enrollments.
Could you do an after action to redirect to those courses, since that's always there, and just do it for new and destroy? No, not new. Create and destroy. Is that possible? You just do an after action?
Yeah, you could. The only thing is that if it hits this else, it might also do the after action as well.
Oh, okay.
So you might have to be careful with that.
Gotcha, because there's an if else. So never mind.
I copied the wrong thing. So this controller is slightly different because we're actually doing different things for our project. Okay, So let's actually implement enrollments inside of the views page. And we technically don't have a page for enrollments, but we will once we update the show, and then that will link us into the view page for enrollments. So that's where our next stop is. Is there any questions about anything we did inside of the enrollments controller? Okay. So let's go into our views. In this case, we need to go to our courses show page here. So this one, I'm going to display the course name. And I want this to be the echoing tag, where it will say course name like so. And afterwards, I'm going to have a link. I'm just going to delete this whole line. So this will be a link to tag. And it will say enrollments. And this will take us to the enrollments page. So to get to there, it will be the index like so. And that will be the course enrollments path. And I need to pass in the course ID. So that is the course enrollments path. And I need to pass in the course ID. Or I can just pass in the whole entire course and Rails knows what I'm talking about. If you want to, you can also have a delete link here for the course. So if you want to delete a course, you can. So I just duplicated that. I'll actually have a BR, so it'll be on the next line. So this will be linked to delete course. And I actually just need the course here. So it knows which one I'm deleting. And this will be method delete. And for a little bit styling purposes, I'll do class of UI red button. So this is the course show page. So it's an app views courses show.html.erb. Before we move on into the index page of enrollments, we need to test out if the links work as well as the delete course work. So we're testing as we're going. So here, I'm going to refresh. Actually, I'm going to go to all the courses, go here, and enrollments work. That takes us to the index. And let's go ahead and delete this one that I created down here. And let's delete that. And it looks like it does. Awesome. So the next page that we are working in is actually in the enrollments index page. So now we are going to be inside of the app views enrollments index.html.erb. So that is the next page we are going into. So app views enrollments index.html.erb. So this one will be a little bit more lengthy because of what I want it to show. So I'm going to have the enrollments here as well as a echoing tag of the course name. So I do have that variable because of my controller. So course.name enrollments. Yeah, that makes sense. And then let's also have a link so we can create enrollments if we needed to. So it'll be a link to add enrollment. And that would be new something. So if I want to go to the new enrollments, then it will be new course enrollments path, and I need to pass in the course ID. So it's a new course enrollment path, and I need to pass in the course ID. And let me go ahead and end my echoing tag there. Okay, and I'll just have like a horizontal line there. So with this particular case, I am going to display each of the enrollments by their role. And if you take a look here, I actually have 3 variables that I need to loop through. So I need to loop through all of the teachers, all of the TAs, and all of the students. So that's technically 3 loops. So I'm going to do it once and then just duplicate it or copy and paste it, and then change the value for 2 more times for the other ones. So the first one, it will be for the teacher. And inside of this, I'm going to loop through my first variable, which is going to be at teachers, plural. And for each of those teachers, I'm going to call them by teacher. Well, just to make it easier for myself, I'll just call it T. You can call it whatever you want, whatever makes sense. I'll call it T just to have it a little bit more shorter. And I'm going to do a list item here. And the first list item is I'm actually going to display the teacher's full name, because technically the teacher is a student. So it'll be t.fullname, which is coming from the user. So it'll be t.user.fullname. And we'll do another separation here. And this will be, so when we did other CRUD actions, we have it be in the show page. Let me show you how it is if you just have it in the index page. So if you wanted to have the ability to edit and update in the index, you actually need to do it in the each do loop in here. So for each of them, what they would have is that they'll have the username, and then you'll also have like a button to edit or delete. And that's the kind of feel that I'm hoping for. And we can technically do this in yesterday's lecture where we have the comments. That could actually be the comments inside of our other topic from yesterday's lecture. So this one will be like a link to for remove. So I'm able to remove the enrollment, and this would be an array of at course. And I need to also bring in the teacher method delete. Okay, so now I need to do this 2 more times for the student and the TAs. So I'm actually going to duplicate this and change it up a bit. This one is TAs. And this one will be TAs.each. And I can still call it T. That still makes sense. And that is a parameter, so it could mean the same thing. And then let's do this one more time for students. So this one will be student. This one will be students, plural. And this one, I'll change it to S so it makes a lot more sense. Like so. And then some separation with some lines there. So let me go ahead and slack this out. That is in your enrollments index page. I forgot to mention that. So now if you go into your enrollments index page, you have teachers and TAs. And in this case, we don't have any students, and you're able to remove them from the enrollments, and you're able to add the enrollment, which is what we will be doing next. Did that make sense of what we did in the index? Is there any questions about this? Okay. So it's technically what we've been doing, but in this case, we're just doing it 3 more times just because we want to separate the data in teachers, TAs, and students so they're more categorized. So let's go ahead and be able to add an enrollment, and that is going to be the form of where we are going to add a new enrollment. And that is also where we'll be connecting both of the course and the user together. So let's go into enrollments, new.html.erb. And we're not going to use a partial for this time just because we want it styled. So we're just doing it directly inside of this file. So at the very top, I'm going to have it say new enrollments, or I'll just say add enrollments. That makes more sense. And I need to do a few things. First one is going to create a bunch of echoing tags. So first one for the user, one for the row, 2 for the row, and then 1 for the submit, and then 1 for the end there. So that will look like so. So we'll have the form width. And for this case, since it's a child, it needs the model to be inside of the array, the parent, as well as the enrollment here. So the parent and the child. Local, true. And then we'll have a styled to be UI form here. And then do F like so. And let's wrap every single one of ours with a field. So div class UI. Well, let me double check this, what we did inside of this form here. Oh, it's just field. Okay. So that one's just called field. And I need an ending div here. Okay, so now I am going to have a label like normal. So f.label and then user. And then for this particular case, I don't actually want a input text field because I don't want them to be able to type in their own role or to type in their own user. If that's the case, then I actually want them to be able to have a selection menu of all of the options that they can have. So what that is called is just called a select. And you're able to do a selection box with this Rails helper here. So this one is for the user ID. And this one, what we are doing is that it also requires an array. And the array that we will have is going to be users plural.collect, calling each one of those as you. And inside of an array, it will have each of the users to be able to grab their full name as well as their ID. So users is coming from our enrollments controller, whereas all of the users that are not in the course yet. So that's what @user is all the users that aren't in the course yet. And what we're doing here is that we are taking all those users and we're actually reformatting the data a bit, where we're only grabbing their full name as well as their ID for when we do use it. That will create an array of what all the users' full name and their IDs, and that is what the user is able to select from for it. And we're actually going to do a similar thing for the role, because I don't want them to also pick out their own role or type in their own role, because they might do something invalid. So we'll do another select here for role. And for this particular case, I am going to have an array of the roles I specified, which is teacher, TA, and student. Spelling matters, and let me show you where it matters. So whatever case you have here, if it's lowercase or capitalized or however you have it, that should be the same as inside of here, inside of your index, because we are grabbing it within the controller itself, where this is lowercase here. So those matter whatever case you have there. So if inside of your index where we are filtering out each of the rows, whatever casing that is, that should also be the same for when you have it in your form here. And then I'm going to have a submit button and also an end. So I'll do f.submit nil with a class of, I'll do a blue button this time, and then I'll end this. So this is the enrollment's new form. And this also works for the edit, but I believe it might not give you the values correctly when you do edit, because you might have to do a different value or a different type of form if you are doing an edit here. You might have to reverse the logic for the new method inside of the controller. Okay, so let's go ahead and test this out. Cool. So I'm going to refresh. And actually, I'm going to start at the very beginning. So if we go to courses and I click on an individual course, I'm able to see the course name, and I'm also able to delete a course. And if I click on here, when it says enrollments, this will be all of the enrollments belonging to that course. So this is the index page of all the enrollments there. And here you can see that it is formatted in a way where all three of them are separated, and we're able to remove enrollments if we want to here, if we click on that.
Hey, Henry.
Yes.
Do you mind showing the model just really quick again, just so I can piece it all together?
Oh, yeah.
Or like the lucid chart model?
Yeah, I think that one's a lot more better. There we go. So what we're doing here is that within how we set up the associations, we're able to grab the enrollments as well as inside of our courses, as well as all the users here.
Cool.
So then if you go ahead and add in enrollment, this is the form that we just created. And you're able to choose all of the users here. And all of these users don't belong to a course yet. That's just how we wrote our logic. And then this here, that is the roles that we specified in the array. Let's have them be a student, because we don't have any student here. And then when we create, okay, let's go ahead and check this out. So with this, undefined method enrollment, do you mean enrollments? What do you think the error is for this case? Any guesses?
Plurality.
Yeah, it needs to be right here. I forgot to put S after enrollments in my controller. So let's go ahead and fix that real quick, and then we'll try again. So inside of my enrollments controller, go to create, and yeah, here it should be enrollments there. So let me re-slack out the enrollments controller. So that's how you would debug your, well, this is specific issue. So I'm going to start all over here, enrollments. Let's create a new enrollment. Let's have this be a student, and let's create enrollment there. And it should add, let's see if everything is good. If it did add it to the database. It looked like it did, but it looks like it didn't update the views here.
I have that for student and TA.
Interesting. Yeah, let me run through this as Lighthouse teacher. So it works for teacher, but then for TA it does work, but then students it does not work. Or maybe it does work, but it's not displaying anything. So this is an error where we don't have an error message. So let's go ahead and see what we can do. So first off, I see the problem is that it's actually going on inside of the index and where we have the students here. So let's go ahead and go into our enrollments index page, see what is going on down there. And it looks like for this here, let's double check the variables for this. So I call this one students. So inside of my controller of enrollments controller, that should be like this. But look at this. I said student singular, but in actuality, I actually put plural. So that's where the error is. Let's try and pull in all the students, plural, but there's none. So let's go ahead and fix that. Let me slack out the controller one more time. That new one is the most updated one. So now let's go ahead and refresh this. And there are all of our students. So let's actually do this one more time. I have currently 3 students inside of this enrollment. So let's go ahead and add another enrollment. Let's do Tiny Rick, student. And there we go. And that was the error there.
Can you try removing one?
Yep.
Okay.
And it should remove for all 3 of them.
I know this is something simple, but like, for example, when we click remove, it pulls us back to the top of the screen, right? So is there like something you put in there to keep them on that same spot?
So what it's actually doing is that if you check in the controller, after you remove, it actually goes to the index path. So it actually redirects you back to that page, which technically is a full page reload, if that's the case.
Got it, that makes sense.
You could try to comment this out and see if you get the same effect. Because technically we aren't going anywhere, but then you had to refresh your page for this to apply. So that's the downside of that. So either way, you do need a full page refresh.
Got it. Awesome.
Yep. Okay, let's wrap up everything with our project. But first, any questions about anything while we push this up to GitHub?
Hey, Henry.
Yes.
When I click on enrollments, it gives me an error, says unknown action. The action show cannot be found for enrollments controller.
Yes, that's because we don't have a show page for enrollments or show action as well.
Okay.
And where is that link located?
So it's in, if I click on courses and then click on a course name.
Yep.
And then there's that little enrollments link
Oh.
underneath.
Yes. That should take you to the index, not the show page. So if that's the case, go into your course show page and see if it's enrollments plural path here with the course ID in the course show.
It says course enrollment path.
Is that enrollments or enrollments?
Oh, it's enrollment.
Yeah, so put an S on that and then you should be good.
Sweet. Yeah, there it is.
Should be plural.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and wrap up. So that was a lot. Again, it really depends on what kind of project you're building. You wouldn't use a has many through in all of your projects. You may use it here and there, depending on your use case. So for our particular case, we do need a has many through. The reason being is that we want a many-to-many relationship because we want to be able to have courses to have many users and users to have many courses. And the only way you can do that with Rails is you can have an advanced association of a user has many courses through enrollments, and then courses has many user through enrollments. And enrollments belong to both the user and the course. So you need a separate table to connect those two so it can have that many-to-many relationship. So if you want to do that, the way you would write it inside of your controller, inside of your model, is that for course, it has many enrollments, and make sure you have the dependent destroy or else you'll get that error of the foreign key constraint thing. Because we don't want to delete both the user and the course, just the reference that connects them together. And we also have this has many through, and this is our through table, which is this one right here. Right, so it has many enrollments as well as has many user through enrollments. And a very similar thing to the user as well is that we has many enrollments as well as has many courses through enrollments here. And all enrollment is that it belongs to both the user and the course. So when you generate the enrollments, make sure you have the belongs to for both the user and the course, or whatever project case is for the through table. The other thing that we covered at the very beginning is the seeds file. And with the seeds file, it allows you to generate data inside of your database. And you can use Ruby to do that. But what we use instead is we actually use the Faker gem, which is what we installed here. That's the Faker gem that we have, which is just a library of fake data that you can play around with. And I just have it like so. Like I'm creating a bunch of courses with a bunch of users, and you can have it be like that. What I would recommend is don't have this be too high of a number, especially this lower one down here, because for every one course, it generates 5 times. So it technically is multiplying both of those together. So you actually have 50 users instead of just 5 users. So be careful with those here. But with our database, it really doesn't matter. It can handle that much data, but it might just be too much data for it to be displayed on the screen. But totally not a big deal if you do have it. The other thing that we did was our controllers, when we fill them out, the user's controller as well as the course controller, they're acting as the parent pattern controller. So it would be the capital C for course and the capital U dot users like so. Now with the enrollments, it's actually a different story because the way we want to lay it out is that we want to lay it out where we want to have the enrollments to be viewed in the course controller, in the show page itself. So if that's the case, then I am going to do it like this, where I am embedding it inside of course, because that's where I want it to be displayed. And because of that, that means that our enrollments controller, the parent is going to be course, and the child is going to be enrollments. So that you'll be writing it like so. The other change that we did with this controller is just how we are setting it up. We're not showing all the enrollments. We're actually showing them each by their role. So that's what we're doing differently here in the index. You may or may not do that. So that's totally up to the application. The other thing that we did is that we also have this line here. And this line is that when we do create a user, it will also give us a variable for us to use for all the users that aren't in the course yet. So that's the helper variable here. And because of this, that requires a user ID. I need to also pass in the user ID for the params here. And that's essentially the main thing with the has many through, is that if you do it, you would plan it out and to see if you need it or not. So any questions about any of that?
So pretty much it's what you use in a many to many, or would there be other options in that? Or if you think many to many, you should think has many through.
Exactly. So you think of a many to many relationship, you would think of has many through.
Got it.
And if you think of like other crazy scenarios of if it's like other types of relationship, I would look it up to see that if you are able to use a has many through, or it might be something more advanced like a has many and belongs to through, things like that. So it really does depend on the different types, but the style of how you would create it would most likely be the same.
Gotcha.
What other questions do you all have? So they're not going to be a review tomorrow. So I am going to stay a little bit after for those that do need to review something or have any questions. So I'll stay all the way till 9:30 or maybe even later for those that need it. So I'll be around here for a bit. But if you don't have any other questions, I will see you all tomorrow for our project day. Thank you.
Thanks, Henry.